everyone, this is Rima's Culinary Adventures and today we are making mango and strawberry jam with homemade pectin. First, let's prep our strawberries. I like to wash them really quickly and drain them so that they are as dry as possible, and then I chop them up into uniform pieces and place them in the pot that I'm going to cook them in until I get exactly 500 grams. If you see a bit of bruising or brown spots, it's best to chop them out, or if you see signs of spoilage, then it's better to discard that piece of fruit completely. I like to see chunks of strawberries in my jam and therefore I'm leaving them quite chunky, but you can of course blend them and pass them through a sieve if you want a smooth jam. Now I add in 500 grams of granulated sugar to my fruit and give everything a good mix. I like to use the same amount of sugar as my fruit because sugar, along with a very sterile environment, prolongs the shelf life significantly. You can reduce the amount of sugar if you want by up to half of the weight of the fruit, but bear in mind that the shelf life will reduce from a year to about 6 months. With my sugar mixed in as best as possible, I cover it up and let my strawberries macerate for an hour or so while I prepare my pectin. With my mangoes, I peel them up, dice them into small uniform pieces, and add them to a pot till I get exactly 500 grams of fruit. I know the way I'm chopping into my mango looks really messy and unprofessional, but I really like to get in there and get as much fruit as possible away from the seed. Of course, you can blend your mango if you want a very smooth jam, but I like it chunky, so I chop them up into little pieces. That said, it is important to cut them up into small pieces because even though you should go for a fruit that is really sweet and has less fiber, there will be a little bit of fiber in mangoes and therefore you want to chop them to shorten the strands a little bit, which makes it really easier to scoop and spread later on. Again, you want to remove all of the brown spots and get the sweetest, freshest fruits for your jam. Really, jams are the perfect way to preserve the best fruits from every season. That said, following the exact process, you can make great jam with frozen fruits all year round. Mangoes are naturally really sweet, so I use about 2/3 of its weight in sugar. So for 500 grams of fruit, I use about 330 grams of sugar. Then I leave it to macerate just as I have with my strawberries. Within an hour or so, this process really breaks down the fruit and all of the juices leak out. Just remember to stir it in every 10 minutes or so to help the sugar dissolve, and you will find that your fruits get really syrupy and perfect for when you're ready to make your jam. If you choose to blend your fruits instead, you don't have to worry about this step at all. You can add your sugar just when you're about to make your jam. Now it's time to make my pectin. I like to add freshly squeezed lemon juice in my jam. It helps a lot with the flavor and the consistency of the jam. So whenever I'm making my pectin, just before making my jam, I squeeze out the juice and throw in all of the rind, seeds into the pot along with my apples, and that stews along with the apples to make my pectin as well. This is because lemon is rich in pectin as well, and because I need to use the juice for my jam, I see no point in wasting the rind. That said, if you're worried that your pectin will turn out bitter, you can absolutely discard the rind and make your pectin with just apples instead. In fact, when I make pectin for my freezer to use later, I make it with just apples and it turns out perfect every single time. Saving my lemon juice in the fridge, I prep my apples. I just chop my apple into smaller pieces so that they cook faster and throw it all into a pot. There's a lot of pectin in the peel, the core, the seeds, so discard nothing. Use everything and you will be really happy with the results. By the way, be sure to use a non-reactive pot. There's a lot of acidic ingredients here, so we want to be mindful of the utensils we use. Placing the pot on high heat, add in your water. We need 200 ml of water per apple, so over here I am making pectin with 2 apples, so 400 ml of water goes in. Once it comes to a boil, reduce the heat to low and simmer away with the lid on, stirring every 10 minutes to make sure that the apples don't catch and burn at the bottom. After stewing for about an hour, you will see that your apples have completely fallen apart. They are absolutely mushy and you can tell that your pectin is ready. Now we pass it through a sieve. Ideally, you want to be using a cheesecloth here. Without it, you will find that a little bit of the pulp goes through as well, which is not a problem if you're making a jam. But if you want to use your pectin to make jelly, you want your pectin to turn out as clear as possible. Also, in an ideal scenario, you should not be messing with it at all. You want to let it stand overnight and let the pectin just drip away on its own. That's the right way to make pectin, but I am incredibly impatient, and because I'm making jam, it will not make much of a difference if I get a little bit of pulp. With my fruits macerating, look how syrupy and lovely it's all become. Most of the sugar has dissolved, as you can see, but there's a little bit there which isn't going to pose much of a problem at all. I usually end up with about 220 to 250 ml of pectin with 2 apples. That's about a cup. For half kilo of fruit, I need about half a cup of pectin. So this amount works perfectly for the 2 batches that I'm making today. I'm going for a very nice, lovely, soft set jam today. But if you want something that's set a little bit more firmly, you can absolutely add more pectin or reduce your jam further. Now I add in my lemon juice. I usually like to start with juice from half a lime first and then taste a little bit and then add more. You want to taste very little at once. There's quite a bit of sugar at this point and it can all be very overwhelming. So therefore taste a little and then adjust to make sure that you can truly experience the flavors without being overwhelmed by one specific ingredient. Now we place our pots over high heat and let it come to a boil. Once it starts boiling, reduce the heat by a little bit. You want it at about medium to medium high heat so that your jam is still boiling but not a rolling boil, and ensure that nothing's stuck at the bottom of the pan, because there's a lot of sugar there and you don't want anything to burn. If you see a lot of foam, reduce your heat to low just so that the jam settles a little bit, and then you can carefully skim some of the froth off. That said, you don't want to worry too much about it at this point because you don't want to throw away too much of the foam and then waste a lot of your jam. You will get plenty of opportunity to skim it off later. If you want, you can also give your fruits a bit of a bash with a potato masher or a ladle, but this is completely optional. Your jam will turn out lovely and fruity regardless. Now, with your jam boiling away, now it's time to prepare your jars and all of the equipment that you'd need later. Preheat your oven to 70 to 90 degrees Celsius and wash your jam jars with soap and very hot water. Once done, place them on a baking sheet upside down and place them in the oven to dry out and sterilize completely. Also place a couple of plates in the fridge to test your jam later. Once your fruits are cooked through and it's looking a little bit jammy and shiny with all that sugar, pour about a teaspoon or so onto one of the chilled plates. Chill it back again, and if it doesn't pass the wrinkle test, then your jam isn't done yet. Place the heat back on medium to medium high and boil away, stirring every couple of minutes for about 5 more minutes, and then check again. After 5 minutes or so, turn the heat back down and then add another teaspoon or so onto a chilled plate. Place it back in the fridge for about 5 minutes until it's cool, and then we perform the wrinkle test. Using a spoon or a finger, push your jam into a line, and if you can see wrinkles form, you know that your jam is done and ready. If not, turn the heat back on and cook your jam for another 5 minutes and then check again. As your jam gets closer to being done, you want to stir it more often, and when you're checking, you want to turn your heat down because you don't want your jam to over reduce. With my jams done, I pull out my sterilized jam jar from the hot oven and very carefully pour in my jam until I have just about 1 centimeter space on top. You want to be very careful to not spill anything here, and if you get any jam on the mouth of the jar, wipe it clean to ensure that it gets sealed properly. If there's any foam that's risen to the top, you can use a dry and sterilized spoon to skim it off as much or as little as you want, depending on whether you're making it for your family or you're planning to gift it to someone, but this is the perfect opportunity to do so. You can also use a measuring cup to decant the jam into the jam jars. I sterilized them exactly how I did my jam jars, then I pour it all until I'm left with just about 1 centimeter on top, and then top it with little rounds of parchment paper and seal it on tight. To ensure that you have a sterile environment, you need to ensure that you seal your jam while it's still very hot. Now leave it undisturbed to cool completely overnight, and your jam is nice and sealed. It's the next day, and let me open my strawberry jam for you. Here's the sound of my vacuum seal coming off. Here's some raspberry jam that I made with frozen fruits, which also turned out beautifully. And also some very impressive work by my hand model. And look how beautifully my jam set. It's lovely and glossy, it's soft, and yet it's set to the right texture. It's wonderfully spreadable. It goes so well with my morning toast. And that's the leftovers from my mango jam, which is set beautifully as well. It's soft and yet it spreads wonderfully. It's not runny and it's got a lovely shine to it. I always enjoy making jam so much, and it makes me so happy that I can enjoy lovely summer fruits all year round. Do give this recipe a try. I'm sure you'll be very pleased. Please like, subscribe, and comment if you like this recipe. Thanks for watching and have a happy day.